Hello, everybody. This is Mickey Moore. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Run Life Today. I'm super thrilled to have a good friend, Kenzie Burleigh. Hello, Kenzie.
Hey!
With us for another inspiring and authentic conversation. At any time you want more information about Run Life Today, please go to our website, runlifetoday.org. And again, these episodes are meant to share the art through experience of our guest, the art of better integrating work and life. Their suggestions coming directly to you as you try to do the best thing. Running more of life versus life running you. So let's get to today's episode. Again, Kenzie, I appreciate your time. I know you're moving about quite often here and there on the Emerald Coast, if I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, between, Tallahassee and Pensacola, I-10 is my home, so I'm always somewhere in between the two.
I hear you. We were just over that way recently, the family and I. We were in Panama City Beach. Now, I got to say before I get to my questions that when it comes to beaches, I'm an East Coast guy. I grew up in Volusia County, but there's just something about that color of the beach on the Emerald Coast. I think I understand why they call it that. The Emerald Coast is just the beautiful color of the water.
I think the color of the water and also the texture of the sand. It's just those two when they meet and when they disconnect, which you don't see, but they never do. But it's just a gorgeous, gorgeous place.
I agree. And the Moore boys had a good time. So let's go ahead and fire away with some questions. And Kenzie, I like to kind of share with the audience and allow you to share a little bit about your background, right? And, you and I have had a friendship for quite a number of years, but I don't know that I know the full story of, where you're from, a little bit about your family, kind of that upbringing piece. So share with us a little bit of those travels early on before you got to that point where you wanted to go to college, maybe and get an education or get your first job. So share with the audience a little bit about Kenzie and growing up.
Sure. So Kenzie growing up was AKA known as the Burleigh Girls. Me and my two sisters, I grew up in Sandy, Utah. So I'm a Western girl. Grew up Mormon. My heritage is the Mormon pilgrims that came over the plains to get to Utah, and that's kind of my background. So grew up in a very religious environment, very volunteer, servant heart oriented, love thy neighbor, have a lot of family over in Utah, lots of cousins. So I feel like I was very lucky in how I grew up, having parents that really believed in me and supported me and quite frankly loved me unconditionally, because I was a pain in the butt at moments for sure. But I'm an outdoors girl, and that's really from growing up in Utah. My dad, most of our vacations were going camping and fishing and hiking, and that's just what I love to do, and I still love to do today. So I'm very grateful for that. But my best friend who moved to Salt Lake in 4th grade, Erica Steinvor at the time, now Delbeck, she was born and raised in Tallahassee. And her family came out to Utah to do a ski trip and just fell in love with it. And her mom, who was actually one of the starting physicians at Patients First with Brian Webb, she then came out to Utah and started doing family medicine out there. And at a very young age, I was getting seminal gifts. 4th grade on, I just remember, I don't know anything different besides wanting to be a Seminole. And
Nice.
That was kind of the plan, is that, once we graduated high school, we were heading across the country with Walter driving us and going to Florida State. And it was actually at Erica's wedding that her mother said, "You know what, Kenzie, I have something to admit to you. I brainwashed you at a very young age because we did the Florida prepaid college plan and we knew you were very influential to our daughter. So if you picked Florida State, we knew she'd pick Florida State." And I'm so grateful for the Steinvors, because that's what brought me to Tallahassee, and kind of the rest is history at that point.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So you answered a few of my follow-ups because, again, the connection, I was saying, well, how do you get from Utah to Tallahassee. So you answered that one. Friends, right? And sneaky planning parents, right? When it comes
Yeah.
to 529 or Florida prepaid. Um, so your mom and dad, what did they do?
So my dad worked at Kennecott, which was a copper mining um, mine out in Utah. And my mother, she didn't work until I guess my sister, I forget what age it was, but she worked at Chase Bank, all sorts of different jobs between telling and um, for banking and all that kind of stuff. So
Okay.
um, my father, he always would receive a award because he never called in a day sick ever, and he worked there. And I could be getting some of this wrong, but since he was maybe 22, and then he retired, I think 65, and never called in a day sick in his life. So that kind of work ethic and um,
Okay.
hard work kind of was distilled in me from a very young age.
Okay, so I don't know if you've been watching all my shows, but you're on my questions. All right. What what are those couple things that come to mind that definitely you learned from your parents, right? So work ethic is one of them. Anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would say, although, and my mother worked for Chase Bank, but she really worked for the church. And I say that because, anything she was ever asked to do from a volunteer standpoint, she said yes to. So whether it was doing young women's or girls camp or you name it, she was always doing something in our community. And I would say that's kind of the second part of my personality is, kind of that servant heart and wanting to help with just the community that you live in. And that was something that I remember, my family used to kind of joke with my mom, like, please just say no one time. Like, you're so busy, and she never did. And then lo and behold, I see those same things with myself. And, people, can you just say no one time? And I'm like, gosh, I'm my mother, or gosh, I'm my father. But, I'm grateful for that also.
So the Burleigh Girl, the nickname, who gave you the nickname, and is there a specific reason, or is it just a general kind of a thing?
Well, so I had two sisters growing up, since one of my sisters has passed away, but the three of us couldn't look more different, right? So we look kind of like Charlie's Angels to some extent because different skin tones, different hair color, different personalities. But my mom would always put our hair in these really tight curlers. And so we all had this like really curly hair, even though it wasn't natural, or she'd braid our hair. Me, I'd get two braids, my sister would get the one, but they'd always say the Burleigh Girls, but it was actually a bad thing because we were a little mischievous running around the neighborhood, and maybe we broke a sprinkler because we were running through the sprinklers. So I think, and I'd have to ask my mom, but I think the initial Burleigh Girls was a bad thing. But it kind of just stuck with it,
Yeah.
so it's the Burleigh Girls. But I'm the only Burleigh left because, my sister who passed, she had a different last name, and my other sister, she has a different last name. So I'm, besides my aunt and I guess my mother, but I'm the last Burleigh girl.
Well, you're representing well, right? So, all right, let's talk about college. So let's transition to that. That's when you came to Tallahassee. Did you have an idea? What experiences stick out? But did you have an idea of what you wanted to study and what you wanted to be at that point, or did you have some feeling out period?
So in high school, I was part of a marketing club called DECA, and I was pretty successful in that. It was a college like AP style class, and there was this DECA club that you could go and submit different things to and compete. And I always was really good at that and really enjoyed that. So I kind of always felt like marketing, communications in general may be something I would do. But quite honestly, when I moved to Tallahassee, I couldn't afford to go to Florida State. And I kind of got, my parents were like, listen, if you want to do this, you're going to have to do it on your own because, we can't afford that. So I went to TCC first. And my first classes that I signed
Right.
up for were I mean, not a direction of career. I did guitar, I did painting, I did dance. I was on the dance club there. It was very much like living a gypsy life when I first moved to Tallahassee because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. But I've always been a magazine person. I mean, if you looked at my bedroom from when I was in high school, I had an entire wall of just layouts from magazines that went up to the ceiling. And my mom was just like, I can't wait to take all this down when you leave because it's so annoying. But, I've always just had this fascination with content and layout and photography. Magazines have always been such a big part of my life that my dream job was like, oh, I'm going to work for Vogue one day. Vogue was one of my favorite magazines growing up. So I think it's always been instilled in me somewhere down there.
Okay, so follow up. So I love the TCC route, right? Because I went to community college too. Now it's called Daytona State College. So I'm a big believer in that. Just not all from a financial perspective, but it's a good start, especially coming out of high school. So you were an Eagle first.
Yes, and I loved TCC. I mean, I had relationships with my professors, and I would just remember most of my classes didn't have more than 20 people in them. And my roommates at the time were going to Florida State, and I remember, like, I never pride myself on being the smartest person. I didn't think. I never really studied before college though. So I learned that, oh, I'm actually smarter than I think. I just have to like practice studying. But when I was at TCC, I was actually tutoring some of my Florida State University friends because they were so far behind in some of the same courses. And I was so far ahead, I think, really because it was that one-on-one kind of rapport that I had with my professor. And I had the ability to actually ask questions when I had them. So I'm super grateful for TCC. I'm a huge advocate for TCC. So I truly did the TCC to FSU route, and I wouldn't change it at all. I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah, I remember, I transferred in too, and I never had to go to a 500-person class, or a 200-person class, thankfully. Maybe 50 was the largest class I was in at FSU, fortunately, So magazines now, you mentioned Vogue, right? So you had, what else? Was it Teen? Was it, I don't know, but
So you're going to
what are the
laugh,
other
but
magazines?
National Geographic, People, and then Vogue. But really, Vogue and National Geographic were my two like consistent. And I never ordered National Geographic. My father just always had them at the house, and I would read them because of that. But I love nature, and that's probably a lot from that too. But yeah, Vogue and National Geographic, you probably couldn't get to two separate ends of the spectrum.
All right. So you, at some point you transferred to FSU. Tell me again, when did you finish your education piece? What degrees did you end up with, and when did you finish?
I finished in 2004 with finance and marketing as my two main focuses. And then I was actually one class away from getting my real estate degree. But I was like, I'm never going to practice real estate. I didn't want to stay one more semester to get one more of that. So, but now I've actually got my real estate license, and I'm like, I should have just taken that last class and I would have never had to go through real estate school. But I immediately got involved in AK Psi, which was a business fraternity. And it's funny because a lot of people are like, oh, were you in a sorority at FSU? I was like, well, I was in a fraternity. Maybe not as cool sounding, but it really taught me a lot of life lessons and relationships that I have to this day. And Dr. Ward, who was a head of our organization, he's, still a friend. And, it really just infused my blood, I would say, into loving Florida State University, was getting involved into that level. So I could really, we were forced to learn the history and the mantras and all the things that went along with that organization, not only through AK Psi, but through Florida State, and great experience.
Awesome. Okay, then. So you're educated officially on a piece of paper. Now we got to transition to, I get your work career. Now it's easy today compared to when I was in college. to kind of find out. I can go to LinkedIn and look at every job you've ever had, but our audience would rather hear about it. So your professional travels, share with us there, your first work, your last work, your current work. Bring us all up to date in a few of those highlights or transitions, if you will, please.
Sure. So I worked all through college, obviously because I was on my own to get through school. Although my parents would help me if I ever asked, so I just want to make note of that, and they did, many times. But um, I would say kind of my professional endeavors through Tallahassee was actually first at Patients First. Um, so kind of taking it full circle of how I even got to Tallahassee because one of the starting physicians. Um, they were implementing a software program, and this was like the first time going from paper to digital. And my roommate at the time was a medical assistant at Patients First and shared that, oh, my roommate's really good in IT and teaching and software development. We should have her come in and just,
Okay.
get her advice. So it turned into me implementing this program to all of the nurses, the physicians over 7 locations, but then also scanning every patient folder to digitize. Um, so I learned a lot from a medical perspective, from a technology perspective, from a people perspective. And then really this is, coming into my senior year of college, I went to the Best of Tallahassee event. I was invited by one of my girlfriends who still's with the company today, Lori Ayton. And that's when I met Brian Rowland, and I met Larry Davidson. And, we had some great conversations, and they Larry said, I'm getting you on the cover of the magazine. And Brian's like, I want you to come work for us. So I knew there was something going to happen, moving forward with that. And I got started with the company in their accounting and finance department. So I started at Rowland in, I don't even know what year we are in now, maybe 15 years ago. So whatever that is. And, looking at their books, I immediately saw there was so much money that was due to them that from advertisers. And so I implemented really just a collection process, which was picking up the phone and calling businesses really. And I think it was within a couple weeks I was able to bring in a couple $100,000 payments, and Brian's like, "What's your name again?" And so I've evolved within the company from kind of the ground, and I think that's what's really helped me be so successful is, really understanding a business from the numbers at which they operate helped me really know how the business can grow, what its strengths were, what its weaknesses were. And I then moved from finance into a marketing role, into a customer service role. But I've done really a little bit of everything. If you look at my LinkedIn, it's like, I was the event coordinator, I did marketing, I was the executive assistant, I've been a sales manager, I've been business development. But I think the one main thing that kind of stays consistent is really just that broader view of the business and how it operates and finding opportunities. And so I've really enjoyed it. I wake up every day doing something I love, which is it changes every day. And I think that that business really catapulted my love for Northwest Florida because it allowed me to really understand our community. It, brought me an opportunity to meet so many people like yourself. I wouldn't know you if it wasn't for Rowland Publishing. And pretty much everybody I know is somehow
Right.
tied to Rowland, whether we've written a story about them or they read a story that changed their life, or they were an advertiser of ours, or, you name it. And it's just been a really fun ride.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there as well. I totally get what you're saying, and I can see how you have been such an asset to that company because, again, you started in the accounting and you've seen all the different moving parts. And of course, anytime you can impact revenue right away, that's always a good thing, right? To see you progress over the years. You talk about 15 years. Um, it's just amazing, from different levels and different positions, all the way to where you are now as the associate publisher and being able to now manage for a few years, some of the larger relationships, the most long-standing relationships that the magazine has had. So, um, what would be, so that leads to my next question. What do you say are one or two keys to your success at Rowland off the top of your head that have helped you be successful in whatever role it is?
I would say one is I never gave up because, this was not an easy ride at times. And so really having the ability to um, stay with something and try to get something better, was ultimately what led to more joy in my life and more happiness. Um, but there was always opportunity throughout my journey of potentially a better job, right? The grass is greener on the other side, and I would get a lot of offers. And I just tend to stay the course with Roland Publishing because I believed in the company and I really believed in the people and I really loved what I did. And so not taking that short return or that short win really has provided kind of the longevity of the joy that I have today. And I look back and go, like, part of me goes, well, I can't believe I stayed through not taking that opportunity or through this situation that may have occurred. And I'm just so grateful that I just stayed true to me. And that was really staying with Roland because a lot of my past relationships, um, past friendships, whatever it might be, was trying to tell me otherwise. And I just knew in my gut this was my place. And so that would be one key thing. And then the other is, I I still don't know everything, but 15 years ago I did. I thought I knew everything. And as I continue to get older and as I continue to evolve professionally, I realize how communication is so crazy. The perception, the reality, the things that happen. And so constantly asking the why and taking the time to have conversations with people has really been a direct result of me being where I am today too, because I see a lot of times where conversations happen and both go away thinking one thing happened and this person thinks this thing happened when really that wasn't the intent of either thing. And they could have lost a relationship or lost a business plan or lost a partnership. And so seeing that early on, I've tried to put that in myself, when I've seen it happen in other situations. And it's hard to do, right? Because you may leave a conversation and be like, wow, that person really just doesn't get it, or we need to move on. No, have another conversation, have that clarification, really make sure that you all are on the same page of what the understanding is. But it's just, again, having that growth mindset that there's got to be a better way and don't give up. There is a better way, to continue to move forward with what you want to do.
Yeah, and again, communication, just how important it is. And I think the key word you said that I talk a lot about is clarity. I mean, that's when there's too much cloudiness, when it's mucky, if you will, or if you're living in the gray area, that's hard to establish, expectations. So clarity is super important. But I'm going to ask you, I guess, a little lighter question about the Roland experience outside of course, the best cover that we were able to collaborate on. Outside of that one, you look back in all of you know, the editions of the magazine. What's your favorite cover, period?
I could never answer this question. Oh, this is a hard one. This is a really hard one. You know, I really like, so I'm a big fan of different covers for different reasons. But our current cover, the May-June issue, is pretty dang good. It's got a great story behind it. It's of our tally top pet, Alice, who, you know, started her life in a very rough situation. I'm not going to spoil the story. And then, you know, our creative director mocked up the cover, and our art director, so Jennifer Eckert and Lindsay Masterson, did illustration. So it was a really kind of collaboration of a lot of people in our organization and organizations in general that kind of came to fruition for that cover. So I do like that cover for that reason. But it's also just the newest one, so it's kind of top of mind right now. But I'm trying to, you know, I think the pet issues tend to be one of our favorites, because what's better than looking at a dog or a cat?
Yeah.
Typically a baby. But if you look back some of the old covers, you know, because we're on our 44th year with Tallahassee Magazine, which is crazy. But some of our really old covers, and I can't remember, there was a OBGYN physician at TMH who had the record of, you know, delivering the most babies. And I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was holding two babies that were twins, and that was a cover. And that was one of my favorite covers, because then, like, fast forward our 40th year anniversary, you know, it's like seeing where those twins were then, and the physician was just now retiring from TMH after all those years. So that was a really cool cover.
Yeah, that's Dr. Brickler, I believe.
Yes, yes, that's it. Yep.
Mm-hmm. If I recall, it was like over 30,000 babies here in our area that he brought to life, so to speak.
It's incredible.
Yeah. Okay, so last kind of business question, you know, for what you can share before we transition to talk a little bit about maybe fitness or community involvement, but what's next? You know,
What's next?
3 to 5. Yeah.
All right. So, well, we are currently sitting at about 40 different magazines that we publish. So lots going on. A lot of people don't realize, you know, all that we do. But one of our goals, you know, 10 years from now, we're really looking at the opportunity where our community can engage with our content every day. So whether that's through the magazine, through social media, through our newsletters, through, can you imagine what technology is going to be 10 years from now? I can only imagine the type of sophistication of engagement that can happen. So we're really looking at infusing that into our region, especially as we continue to publish more magazines for more neighborhoods, not-for-profits, organizations that, you know, that is our niche, and that is, you know, our purpose ultimately is to inspire, educate, and support the communities we serve. So as long as that engagement meets that threshold, look out. You talk about that you're at the TCC Innovation Center. I met with Scott last week, and I kind of, you know, I was like, listen, all right, this is my big dream. And, you know, Brian, plug your ears. No, I'm just kidding. But envisioning, you know, Tallahassee Magazine as it already is today, it's more than a magazine, right? It's a window to the life in Tallahassee at that moment in time. And I think that's really cool, is when you go back and look at some of those old issues, you can see the fashion, what were some of the main subjects of the things people were talking about. But imagine Tallahassee Magazine being somewhere that you walk into, and there may be a retail component with local products that you would see featured in the magazine also available to buy, and maybe interactive panels of screens that could change out depending on what we're wanting to showcase in a big space like the TCC Innovation Center. So who knows, we maybe be in that building sometime in the future too.
We'll be neighbors. All right, I won't tell Brian. So let's transition to another lane, right? And this, I'm a little more familiar with some of your efforts, but there's just too many to keep up with when it comes to your activity level. I mean, from a fitness standpoint, because again, I know you're into yoga, you're into fitness. I mean, just running, biking, hiking, trailing, swimming. I don't know, fishing, juggling. I'm not sure what else is out there that you're not doing, but um, I guess for the audience, say mention a little bit about your commitment there to a fitness piece, and where it may be started or what your favorite things to do when it comes to being active.
Sure. So I think my physical activity stems from my youth. Being involved in soccer and dance at a very young age kind of gave me that consistency of that I like to move often. So I do believe
Mhm.
it's super important for parents just to getting your kids involved in any physical activity that may work for them because it's different for every kid. And so I'm grateful that I had that as kind of my building foundation. But actually, how I kind of accidentally got involved into fitness. One of my college roommates was teaching at Women's World, if you remember that gym back in the day. And they had
Mm.
a certification. So Gold's Gym owned Women's World. It was where Whole Foods is now, somewhere in there, that shopping center. And I'm just kind of I like to learn. I'm a very curious person in general, which is why I tend to say yes to a lot of things. And my girlfriend said, "Hey, we're doing this certification through Beachbody. They're going to be doing, what's called PIO at the time, Pilates and yoga. I know you love just to learn. You want to come do a weekend certification." And so I started doing certifications for myself. I just liked to learn. I like to work out. So that's kind of what got me to that path. And then I was introduced to sweat therapy. My ex-husband was working out there consistently, and we decided to take classes. And I met Kim Bebo at one of the TRX classes, and she was like, "You are one step ahead of my instruction. How do you already know how to do this?" And so I was like, "Well, I'm actually certified in this." And so she was like, "Will you come just teach at least one class?" Well, I'm a yes person. Sure. Yeah. So that got me involved into fitness, and I'm so grateful. I was at sweat therapy for gosh, like 11 years. And one of the things that they always do once a year, there's usually these fitness expos up in Atlanta, and you can go get continued education points. But if you go a day or two early, you could also get certified into something as well. So I pretty much every year just added on that extra 2 days. So I mean, I'm certified in anything you can imagine between BOSU, piloxing, cycling, Pilates, just again, that's just from my curiosity standpoint. But I love everything. And I think the main thing is just finding the thing that works for you and have it
Mhm.
consistent, and that things might change, because that's the other thing is as we grow and as we maybe move in different geographic locations, not being so hard about, well, maybe you're the only person I know that you're a runner, you'll be a runner for the rest of your life. But runners are typically that way. But a lot of other people I know, like they may really enjoy cycling and then they kind of get to maybe a plateau, but then, hey, go try drip drop fitness and dance for your cardio, or go try, whatever it might be. But don't stop trying other things, because I think that just new group of people or new fitness activity is what kind of keeps it interesting and fun for me.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot there. And I know, I guess, well, first I kept thinking about Taibo for some reason. Is there a certification in Taibo? Does that still exist?
It does.
I don't know.
I'm certified in Tai Chi.
Okay.
It's completely different than Tai Bo, but Tai Chi is cool too.
So, and then some recent news, right? So you're a partner or a collaborator with a yoga business or something in 30A, is that right?
Yes, Studio 30A. It's located in Redfish Village, right above Redfish Taco. And I'm now teaching there on Sundays. So it's our Sunday Fun Day Vinyasa Flow at 9 a.m. and it's just a gorgeous space. You can see the Gulf from the room. So I mean that alone is worth just coming.
Well, so because you and I, have talked again and previously and before our interviews, but are you looking to do anything new and different on the fitness side of things, or what do you think?
Yes. So I'm spending a lot of time over at the beach. So I want to become a surfer. So that's where when we were chatting just a little bit earlier, yeah, a little earlier, I said I was wanting to work on becoming a stronger swimmer because that's obviously a very critical foundation to surf. I do paddleboard a lot. I've been paddleboarding for a long time, but now that I'm around water more often, I am paddleboarding a lot more, which is a really fun fitness exercise because you don't really realize you're working out when you're paddling, and just different techniques can really work the full body. Um, but even just walking my dogs, I think that was something that I really started doing during quarantine, which I didn't do very often. And I really enjoyed walking my dogs and taking them on trails. So I would say those are some new things on the fitness side that I'm just doing more of.
Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that's a lot there, but I think you should just go ahead and sign up as well for an Ironman,
Ah!
whatever.
I don't know if I can ever have that mental toughness that you have to, I mean, gosh, 5 hours of nonstop. I don't know. I mean, that just takes another breed of human.
Can't do it. So, all right, let's try to work in one more lane, right? Because again, there's so many things that you're involved in, but from your mother's example, and probably your father, but the servant heart, right, to our community. Share with everybody, a few of those, maybe nonprofit causes or roles that you put a lot of effort in, whether it be United Way or a board service or volunteering in an event. But share with us your capacity for giving back to the community and how much that means to you in your life every day.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things I'm really grateful for is what I do for a living. We have a community outreach area of our business. So, we go out and we find, or they find us, the not for profits that we're going to sponsor for that year. And that used to be one of my first roles at Rowland Publishing. So I really got the opportunity to not only help promote that organization and facilitate, whether it's educating our community on what they're doing or promoting an event that they're doing, but then I would take it usually a step further and help them in some way, whether it was volunteering that morning for the actual event, or so I kind of got to dip my toe in a lot of the work that's going on in Tallahassee. So I didn't have any official board work there, maybe, or official volunteering, but I would just kind of do that. And I still do that today. So in every given year, I'm usually helping out about 20 different not for profits to some capacity. But then, I've done a lot of work with the United Way the last 3 years with Women United. And really, that's one organization that helps so many different organizations in our community. That's what really kind of drew me to wanting to work with them because I was able to volunteer for one organization, but really affect and support so many different people. And I think that's why I really thrived on what I was doing with them. Um, and then, of course, with Rowland Publishing, we did our own kind of not for profit side with some of our events we were doing. So, Top Singles, which we don't do anymore, was a big part. I kind of brought that on, and Top Salons was another one that I brought on. So, again, with Top Singles, we would have, 10 singles that all benefited different organizations. So then I was exposed and helped those organizations. So I'm really lucky that I get the opportunity to learn about what's going on in our community. And then depending on what I have available personally, I can help them in different avenues. So that's currently where I'm standing. Just finished my tenure as the Women United chair. So that ended 2 weeks ago. But they do incredible work, as everybody in our organization or in our community knows. and they launched a whole COVID campaign in addition to their regular funding last year. So Bernice Cox, who leads that organization, I just can't say enough great things about her and her team, Molly and Elena. They taught me a lot about having that servant heart, you know. So anything I can ever do to help them, you know, they know my door is always open, and I'll be still helping them regardless. So anything they ever need, I'm there for them.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, I'm a fan of United Way because to your point, there are so many small organizations that can't get out there and build their own awareness and gather their own support. And the United Way does that on their behalf, you know. So I love the United Way for that. The top singles piece, right? So I guess I got to ask you there, was the decision there, was that COVID related or was it just time? And do you miss it? Do you think that it just kind of ran its course and you want to do something different?
Well, I think it was time to take a pause. You know, we were going through that was actually kind of when I was telling you about that traction program. We had different visions of what the future looked like. And so we needed to really kind of take a pause so that we could focus on the business instead of working in the business. And that was why that event kind of paused at that time. But I personally, I believe that that event, whether it's a Roland Publishing event or somebody else takes it on, is not only impactful for what we do, but it helps so many connections. You know, it's not just about the money raised that helps the organizations, but it's also about those people that connect, not from a single standpoint, just from a resource standpoint, that what rolls out of it has been pretty impressive, whether it's business ideas or different not-for-profits now having collaborations together moving forward. So that education portion of the not-for-profits that came out of that event was really cool. So I mean, I think it will be back. Whether my name's behind it or not, it should come back.
Yeah, yeah, I hope it does. And you and I, again, we use some of the same words because we're like-minded. I think connectivity again and participation. It doesn't always have to be about the money. It's about learning and sharing and collaborating. But there's so many ways that people can participate with our nonprofits. It doesn't have to be by financial means, because nonprofits need experts, to help them run their businesses. So board service and volunteering is just as important for a lot of those nonprofits. So hopefully the top singles will come back in some form or fashion. But to the money, y'all brought, and the top singles, a lot of resources to our local nonprofits over the years. So congratulations on the success of that event. It was tremendous.
Thank you. Yeah, I know our very last year we wanted to hit 6 digits in fundraising. And I was excited, that we definitely did that and exceeded where I was expecting it to go. So it paused on a very positive note. So I'm excited to see how it comes back.
Okay, so fitness, let's just say you're going to be busy, community involvement, you're going to continue to be busy on the business side, you're going to continue to grow professionally and do different things and more things. And I'm sure there's a lane or two we haven't even talked about, right? Because I know how important your friends are to you. I know how important your family is to you, and you spend a lot of time there. But I want to get to the most important question, in our interview, is the art that you've learned over the years in integrating work and life, right, across so many lanes, to where it just seems like, Kenzie, you run more of life than life running you. So for our audience, when they listen in, what would be a couple suggestions, tips, best practices for them to get better at integrating work and life? What do you think?
So I think for me, what works really well for me is really there's twofold. One, once you've made a commitment about what you want to do, honor the commitment, because that consistency is really building the trust with yourself. That's one thing I learned, and it takes work. I'm still not perfect at it, but it's true. I remember listening, I think, to a podcast about if most people like yourself and myself and people who have those servant hearts, you're always putting other people first, right? And so then you're not taking care of yourself and you're not running your own life if that's the case. And so you have to make small commitments to build your own trust back. So even if it's something simple like, I want to start having more physical activity, so I'm going to do every Monday for 1 hour. Well, find the hour that really works for you. Don't do the hour that it's the person you want to be. Stop like having those aspirational goals because they're never going to work. So if you're not a morning person, don't make it in the morning. Put an hour block in your calendar of that you truly can get to that. And if you work for somebody like Brian Rowland or anybody, if you have these conversations with your employer and say, listen, I'm going to be a happier person if I can work out 1 hour a week. Hopefully you can get to more than that, but start small. Can I block from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. every Monday? Because that's the only time that I don't have to go do this errand on my lunch break, or my kids don't need me to pick them up from school or whatever. And I'll make up the time another time. Any good boss is going to say yes. So it's just like, even find it in the work week and put it on your calendar. I literally block my personal time on my calendar, just like it's a client presentation. So I make it that important that unless something crazy comes up that I have to move it, it's non-negotiable. This is the time I'm calling my mom, or this is the time, I'm going to go on a bike ride or whatever it might be.
Thing that jumped out first you said was making a commitment, right? The second thing was building trust in yourself. And I guess the last thing that jumped out again was the calendar, right? Making it non-negotiable, even though emergencies do happen. I guess I know I can be OCD a little bit when it comes to planning, but I would imagine you would agree, you have to be that committed to your calendar to where you just don't let people interrupt that calendar at certain times. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it's communication. So, like, for example, if you started saying, all right, every Monday from 10 to 11, this is my me time, whether it's whatever, walking outside, going biking, yoga, whatever it might be, reading a book, meditating, you tell the people that are in your closest circle about that, whether it's your boss, your coworkers, your family, and then it becomes not a variable that you're having to negotiate with them to do. Because once it's Monday at 10 o'clock, Kenzie's not available, people will stop asking to see you during that time when you make it that consistent, and that helps hold yourself accountable too.
I like that. Yeah. Again, back to your communication piece and just how important it is to be clear on where you're going to be and what you're going to do so you can build that expectation. Again, so it's no longer a negotiable.
Yeah. And I think too, one other thing I'd like to just share, my time that I kind of allocated for mine was working out or meditation. I think part of that too is having the flexibility that if a friend does want to see you, you can say, well, this is my 1 hour that I'm doing yoga. Why don't you come do it with me? And you invite the people that are in your life to participate in some of that. And it makes it easier, even with children. I've seen parents that say, well, this is mommy's meditation time, but, I want to see you too. So why don't you come do meditation with me? And you're instilling so much to that child too, of teaching them mindful practice, but also how important it is to take care of yourself so that when they grow up, they don't have to go through what we're going through, trying to figure out how to take care of ourselves.
I agree. Now, yeah, I mean, look, again, you used the word participate, and that's ultimately, one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast is just to help generate some movement, right? And to get people to participate in some way, be active, whatever it is, with your kids, with your family, with your coworkers, with your pets, but just participate. So speaking of participate, I want to again say thank you to you for dedicating some time to participate in our Run Life Today episode. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. And it was so good to see you. I had a good time.
Yeah. For everybody, again, our audience, look for this episode. It'll be on the website, runlifetoday.org, and all of our other episodes. Watch us, like us, follow us, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll see you next time. Again, Kenzie, take care of yourself. I will hopefully see you face to face soon.
I hope so. Thanks, Mickey.
All right. See you later.